Okay.
7 o'clock.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the District Development Management Committee. Gary, you?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll read the webcasting announcement for you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing or other such use by third parties. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. If any public speakers on Zoom do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Please be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, the Chairman may need to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, item 2, advice for public speakers.
Chairman, just for noting, I've advised all the public speakers tonight they will have 3 minutes on how to operate the microphone, so I think they're all happy.
Do we have any apologies for absence?
Chairman, the only apology for absence we have tonight is Councillor Kesker, hence you are in the chair.
Yes, thank you. Right, and that brings me neatly to the fact that I haven't got a vice chair as I've moved up one tonight. I'd like to propose that Councillor Williamson acts as Deputy Chair for tonight. Thank you very much. Do you all agree there, members? Thank you. Right, now to come to item 5, declarations of interest, and I'm afraid I've got to make an announcement to start with. Because I'm a member of the, in respect of the first item that we're going to discuss tonight, namely the rugby club, as I'm a member of the club, I shall have to leave the chamber, and Councillor Williamson will be conducting the move over to the chair's seat. Anyway, are there any other declarations of interest? Sorry, Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. Not really an interest, but just in the interest of transparency, a non-pecuniary interest in the fact that I used to be a member and I used to play at the club, but currently I am no longer associated with the club. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you. Right, where are we now? The minutes. Have you all seen the minutes? Do you have any comments, anybody?
Agreed.
No. Have you agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Of site visits. Anybody, anything requiring any site visits? No? Nothing? Okay, moving on. Right, the Epping Forest District Local Plan Submission, version planning, got anything to add to that, Gary?
No, Chairman, this has been out for a while now and it's part of the local plan process.
Okay.
I think it's just an advice note for members, applicants, objectors, residents, etc., and it's just for the committee to note.
Okay, thanks. Right, then in that case, we're on...
Sorry, I switched my phone off.
Item 9, the planning application for Upper Clapton Rugby Club. Now this is when I've got to leave the meeting, and Ken, you going to move up?
Yeah, I'll move over, thank you.
Cheers. I'll take that out.
Just turn my phone off just in case.
Yeah,
No, it's
I've got...
on my laptop, it's my work phone. It's already on silent.
Right, I'll go.
I'll come and get you in a minute.
Don't forget me.
Thank you, members. I will be a voting chair on this application if it's necessary. So we're now going to take item 9 on the agenda, planning application EPF 1400/20, it says Clacton, but it's Clacton Rugby Club, 61 Upland Road, Epping. So if we could go to the officers' presentations, thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Chairman. So first on the agenda is Upper Clapton Rugby Club in Thornwood. This proposal is before members tonight, since it's been referred to DDMC from Area Plans East Subcommittee. It was recommended to the subcommittee with a recommendation to refuse planning permission. The subcommittee agreed with the officer recommendation, and the recommendation tonight is to refuse planning permission. The proposal is for the development of an all-weather pitch, proposed function hall, demolition of an existing golf range, further car parking, formalisation of car parking, and the construction of 9 new dwellings on the site. So starting with the application site, it's located on the southern side of Upland Road within Thornwood and is obviously currently used as a rugby club. The site currently consists of several buildings, swathes of hard standing, an all-weather pitch, which is located here, and fields, open fields for various sporting activities, mainly rugby. Planning permission, and any members that were on the site visits that have been undertaken will know that the planning permission was granted in 2013 for the replacement clubhouse, which is this building here, the existing clubhouse. That was, members may remember that in the previous application, there were 8 new dwellings as enabling development at the front of the site, which were to fund the improvements that were required for the club. I say it was enabling development because the entire site is within the boundaries of the Metropolitan Greenbelt. Erection of new dwellings in this location, so the previous application, clearly inappropriate development. However, in the previous application, members considered that there were very special circumstances which clearly outweighed the harm that was going to be caused. Now, this proposal seeks permission for further residential development towards the front of the site, which consists of 9 new dwellings. This is proposed as a further enabling development to enable the completion of the upgrades to the club. The previous money that was made from these dwellings, from these original dwellings, was not enough to cover all of the desired improvements. So the first thing I want to make clear to members is the proposal for housing in this application is clearly inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. It would cause additional harm to openness due to its sheer quantum and would conflict with its fundamental purpose of keeping land permanently open. And in accordance with the MPPF, these harms must be given substantial weight by the members of the committee. The improvements to the club itself, for the reasons set out in the report, are for the most part either not inappropriate development or planning permission has already been granted and the development has been commenced, so could therefore be completed. So the inappropriateness of the development is confined to the dwellings at the front of the site. So just to give you an idea of the layout, the new residential dwellings, it would be 3 pairs of semis and a small block of terrace housing. It will continue the general line that currently exists on Upland Road. And this is the proposed street scene for the front and rear elevations. Members can see that in terms of the design, scale, mass, use of materials even, it's very similar to the existing dwellings that were approved to the east, which are these dwellings here. So their relative eaves and ridge heights are very comparable, and it's not going to be overly prominent or cause harm to the character and appearance of the street scene. So this just shows I suppose the master plan for the site. So the proposed improvements to the club include the delivery of this function hall, which has been approved previously, which is located directly adjacent to the new clubhouse, which has been built. The new parking, the members that were on the site visit could see that the parking is not formalised at the moment, has quite a few potholes as well, and the existing clubhouse is actually located sort of in the middle of it. So that would be delivered as part of the upgrades. The removal of the golf driving range and the removal of the clubhouse as well, I should say. So the question before members is simply whether the improvements to the club do constitute the very special circumstances required to clearly outweigh the harms to the greenbelt, which I identified earlier. And as I said, they must be given substantial weight against the proposal. Members, you are reminded that whilst the notion of enabling development is identified in planning policy, it's normally for heritage assets that are at risk. However, it's not exclusively, and community facilities at risk can also fall into this category, as members took that view in the previous application in 2012. In general, though, it is clear that businesses should expect to meet their own costs for developments, for improvements to their sites, rather than rely on inappropriate forms of development, where there is a strong presumption against it. There is a strong emphasis on protecting greenbelt land. So for very special circumstances to exist in this case, it will be necessary for the works to the club to be absolutely essential, in the public interest, and for all other potential funding streams to have been exhausted. As I said, inappropriate development should be a very last resort. So officers have concluded that in the circumstances advanced do not clearly outweigh the identified harms for the reasons which are articulated in some considerable detail in the report. But in summary, the works haven't been suitably demonstrated to be absolutely essential for the ongoing running of the club. The new clubhouse has already been delivered. In the previously approved application, the main thrust of the very special circumstances was the delivery of this new clubhouse. That had support from Sport England, who commented that the pre-existing clubhouse was not fit for purpose, was structurally unsound, and the improvements were considerably more than just cosmetic. Whilst Sport England have offered support for this application, it doesn't carry as much weight since the new clubhouse has already been delivered, as made clear in the report. The proposed improvements to the club through this proposed application can all be found on page 28 of tonight's agenda, and officers have concluded, as I said, that they can't be considered to be essential for the ongoing use of the club, which continues to operate. However, officers do recognise that they are desirable for ongoing growth of the club, which is a well-used facility in the local community. The applicant provided information regarding grant funding, which has been sought, and page 29 of the agenda identifies that support which was given from various sources. The report also acknowledges that some grants were refused, but the most recent one was made in 2015, 7 years ago. So it can't necessarily be demonstrated that there are not other potential sources of funding for such improvements to the club. So therefore, in summary, it is concluded that the proposal was inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, would cause additional harm to its openness, would directly conflict with the fundamental purposes of including land within the Greenbelt to keep land permanently open, and would generally increase residential paraphernalia and domestic activity in and around the site, causing further harm to its character. No adequate very special circumstances have been advanced to clearly outweigh these harms, and therefore it is strongly recommended that planning permission is refused. Since there is no mechanism to deliver the necessary financial contributions towards the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation, this should form an additional reason for refusal, as set out on page 32 of tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have two speakers on this application. The first one is James Waters, who's in the chamber. Mr. Waters, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Under the National Planning Policy Framework, the government attaches great importance to greenbelts. The fundamental aim of the greenbelt is to prevent urban sprawl by keeping land permanently open. The essential characteristics of greenbelts are their openness and their permanence. Inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the greenbelt. and should be refused planning permission unless very special circumstances can be demonstrated which clearly outweigh this harm. When considering an application, the local planning authority should ensure that substantial weight is given to any harm to the greenbelt. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness or any other harm is clearly outweighed by other considerations. Members, around 10 years ago, the club were given permission to have 8 houses built on their greenbelt land to pay for the new clubhouse, floodlights, etc., under very special circumstances. 2 of these houses extend west beyond the reach of the existing council housing on the north side of the road, so now upset the visual balance of the street scene somewhat. If you walk footpath 50 in a southerly direction from Rye Hill Road through Common Field facing the club site, as I do regularly, you can see how this earlier development obscures the distant view of the Epping Forest tree line and does affect the greenbelt openness. Now, this further application, under very special circumstances, for more housing will shield more of that scene in what is left of our greenbelt. What has changed since the last application of only 10 years ago? If this second very special circumstances request is approved, it will result in a total of 17 dwellings permitted on this greenbelt land. That's just one less than the entire council side north of the road, and it would increase the amount of westward sprawl significantly. Finally, that scrappy piece of overspill car park that Sport England have said has no value for sport would actually make a great bowling green. Please restrict this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The second speaker is Anita Cook, who is speaking on behalf of the rugby club. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Anita Cook and I'm the club's vice chair. I've been a volunteer at the club for more than 15 years and have 3 sons playing there. As I address you tonight, my heart is heavy with the enormity and importance of this application to all the volunteers that run this club, its members and the local community that use it. I cannot put into words the level of dedication and passion that we as volunteers put into the club and the longing we have to continue to do so. But this is only possible if we find a way to secure its future. In 2013, we did our best to identify a project that could sustain our future, but in hindsight, we were optimistic and naive. Grant applications were rejected and the money raised fell significantly short of completing this. We are left with pitches of poor quality, which are frequently waterlogged, losing us many weeks of rugby every year and consequently impacting our financial health. The council's own play and pitch strategy confirms this and recommends that substantial investment is required. Our car park and clubhouse also require investment to support the longevity of the club. You may ask what is different this time and what's to stop us asking for more in the future. The answer is simple. This time we are confident we know what is required to solve this situation. There is no more surplus land that we could ever consider disposing of. Our clubhouse and playing pitches are all that is left and the very lifeblood and purpose of our being. We have therefore provided the council with a full development appraisal by an independent viability consultant, and the costs and revenues demonstrated are accepted by officers. Sport England support what we're trying to achieve. The local community supports us also. Just see the heartfelt messages on social media. As a major sporting club in the district, the residents proposed for this area within the local plan will wish to use our facility, and we will welcome them with open arms. Your officer's report appears without balance. It is without reference to the council's own play and pitch strategy. It seeks to deny you from concluding that the benefits of this proposal, whether they are essential or not, could outweigh the harm of 9 homes to a modest piece of greenbelt that is an unkept overspill car park located between existing housing on Upland Road. We recognise that this is not an easy decision to make. We are not asking the council for financial assistance. We are asking for you to grant us the opportunity to address our existing deficiencies and obtain financial security to this major sporting facility in the community. We have also put forward suggested planning conditions that answer the subcommittee previous queries. This application is not just about the survival of this club, it's about the people, the community, the generations of children and adults who play, learn and grow through sports, who create memories and friendships that last a lifetime. This application is about preserving the heart and soul of our community, and I implore you to consider that before making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, if ever there was a heart and head decision, I think this is the one tonight, and I'll probably say something a bit later in the debate. Holly Whitbread is our county council representative for this ward. Would you like to start the debate?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to come in. Also, the District Council representative for the last, well, since 2016. So I am aware of the site history of this club. I want to start my comments by saying what a great facility I believe the club to be, and to declare an interest. I do have family, rather young family members who are members of the club and use the facilities. I've seen through Essex County Council with my other hat on some of the great work they do within the community, hosting the school, the hot meals groups during the summer holidays with the West Ham Academy, as well as other activities. So I just wanted to preface my comments just to really emphasise my support for what I believe to be a fantastic community facility. At Plans East, there was a really long debate, and I think it's worth putting on record that it was a tied vote with the chairman's casting vote. So the committee were really torn on that decision. And in Plans East, I did decide to vote in favour of the application. And the reason I wanted to come here in person tonight was to really show my support for this application. The application with conditions, and actually what was really key to the debate at Plans East, which was a long one, was highlighting some of the conditions that we really believe to be key if members are minded to support this application this evening, which I hope they will be. So particularly in relation to the demolition of the outbuildings, obviously that would be really key, but that was promised last time, and that would be something that is really important, particularly to minimising the impact on the greenbelt. I also think it's worth thinking about potential ways to alleviate the impact on local highways and local residents. Mr. Walter spoke and made very good points about the impact this will have on the greenbelt, but also on the residents of Upland Road. So what I would really like to see is almost a translation of the conditions discussed in a lot of detail at Plans East looked at this evening. So overall, I am in favour of this application. I'd certainly like members, obviously after a detailed debate and a look at the conditions, to vote in that way. I think we've seen the huge amount of community support for this facility. I would also say that it's disappointing that we've had to see the application come forward in 2 stages. I do understand the arguments around viability and the financial challenges for any voluntary organisation, but obviously that has led to challenges particularly around the planning system, which has made this an even more complex case, and the arguments around exceptional circumstances a bit more difficult from a council perspective. But as I noted, I would like to see this application go through this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, can I maybe join? I started off by saying it's a heart and head decision, and the heart says you do an amazing job, and I think all of the councillors here are very grateful for the amount of time and effort. And you mentioned passion, I think, is also in this. It is amazing what you've done over the years. We thank you for that. And it makes this even more hard to say what I'm going to say in a second. I think I'd like to have met the people that decided to move from Upper Clapton to Epping. Whoever they were, I think they must have been amazing people. It was one hell of a leap of faith, and it's paid off so well. And I think they'd like to come and see what's actually happened to that decision they made. Now the head bit. I've watched the debates in 2012 and 2013, and there were sort of statements made at the time, and I accept your optimistic and naivety statement. But at that time, it was said by yourselves, very exceptional circumstances cannot be repeated elsewhere because there were worries about precedent. Well, they're not going to be repeated elsewhere, but you're asking us to repeat them here. There was a great debate about viability checks as to whether 8 houses in the first case, it had to be 8 or could it be 6. There was a lot of discussion at the time about the viability, and it came down that 6 would not be enough, but 8 was enough. It's really difficult to come back. Also stated by, I think it was one of the councillors at the time, looking from the site to the road, it's okay, it's on the right-hand side, we can accept that, but we could never accept it on the left-hand side, which is what you're asking for now. But I think my main problem is not something that it's the affordable housing element. If this had come forward as one application, we'd be looking 17, we'd be looking at 40% affordable housing, but both of these are now under the limits required, and there's no affordable housing in the scheme. It's just something to bear in mind. I am really, really conflicted on this application, and I think I'd like to listen to other members to see what they've got to say before I finally make a decision. Members is Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, it's very, very strange sitting here with this again because it's just totally deja vu, completely deja vu from being here 10 years ago and having this exact same application before us, really. I was very, very impressed by the club spirit and everything, because I remember last time everybody came in their blazers and they all sat around in the lower chamber, and I was so impressed, and I can't remember, but I think that one was recommended for refusal as well, I think, on Greenbelt grounds, but we were so overwhelmed by the turnout and how it just sort of knocked us backwards, and we did agree to it. But I'm struggling to see how you have 8 new houses in a place like that, and you claim that you've used all the money up from 8 new houses there. It must have been a huge amount of money. And again, if we look at our papers here, you came back 6 years later for another one. So in 2018 was the first one. You asked for another 10. And then you've come back again, another 4 years later, for another 9. And I was impressed last time. I do understand it's a wonderful club. I'm very impressed with what you do. But, you know, I love the green belt. That's why I live here. I love the countryside. It's particularly beautiful countryside. And we all did the site visit, and we stood there. And already those last 2 houses that were built last time extend beyond the edge of that bit of the village. If you put another, what are we asking for this time, 8, 9 houses this time, you'll go way, way out into the green belt. And I just think that's too much. I think you had a lot of money from 8 houses last time. For some inexplicable reason, you haven't removed your old buildings yet. That wouldn't cost much to remove those. You could easily make the car park tidier. You've already got permission to extend your clubhouse yet further if that's what you want to do. You know, I just feel this is an ask too much. I think it's against policy, it's against the green belt. It's very upsetting. It's a great shame because I know people in that club. I know it's a very good club, but I think it will still continue to be a good club without another lot of new houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I was at the previous meeting of Plan Z, so apologies if some of what I've said was also said then, but clearly this is a new meeting and a new process. I mean, clearly a lot of the application in front of us is uncontroversial and appropriate development in the Green Belt, as the officer's report explains, in terms of the all-weather pitch, in terms of the the floodlights. We do have floodlights elsewhere in the Green Belt to support outdoor recreation. They are a potential nuisance. They can be controlled by appropriate lighting conditions, particularly with the improving technology we've got these days. Car parking spaces are ancillary to the outdoor recreation. They don't particularly compromise the openness of the Green Belt. The function hall is more arguable, but the officer sets out how, because of its size and because of the existing planning permission, that is a reasonable ask. So it does come down to the housing, and there's no argument that it meets the test of inappropriate development in the Green Belt. So there's no argument that be permitted. It requires very special circumstances. And I've been thinking back to the previous examples of where the council has considered that very special circumstances exist. There's mention in the report of to fund heritage projects, as we saw at Gaines Park, for example. We've got the example of St John's School in Epping, which was built on the Green Belt because it was felt there was substantial public benefit in the delivery of good educational facilities to the local population. Examples of affordable housing in the Green Belt at Gilwell on the edge of Chingford, and another site in Plans West. Plans West has allowed various developments for that reason. And of course there's this development previously. And I think there's a distinction between developments which have a clear public development and developments where the benefit is private. And there are examples of sports clubs who serve only their own members where we've refused development because it was for the use only of its own members. I mean, here, it seems to me there are quite strong public benefit arguments because these pitches and these facilities are used not only by the members of the club, but by the wider community, either for hideout for the use of them, or used for council and other sports development projects, used on a multi-sport basis. And I have thought carefully about the different arguments on this and listened carefully to the different arguments that have been put forward. But it seems to me that those public benefits clearly would need to be secured by appropriate conditions and legal agreements, that appropriate conditions would be needed to protect the amenities of local residents, to make sure that things like landscaping and so forth were appropriate, which are things we do for normal developments. But it seems to me that there is that substantial public benefit argument, which the council has used before, and which do apply, if the community use agreement and so forth are delivered to this development. And I think for that reason, I'll support it.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid I'm going to upset one or two people, but I've listened to what our objector has said, Mr Waters over there. Although the club do a marvellous job, this is inappropriate development in the Green Belt. Looking at the new club has been built, but looking at some of the figures here, the function hall, is that necessary for that club to have a function hall at that cost of $547,000? And there is a good village hall down the road at Thornwood, if you need sort of events down there, not on that site, of course. But
the floodlighting, 691,000. I can't see how they got that figure as much as that. Those two figures together would say so much. I feel there are no special circumstances. It is in the Greenbelt. They've already had one bite of the cherry in the previous application, and so I'm afraid I won't be supporting the application.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Some good points raised by my fellow councillors. I'd like to just share with members my perspective on rugby as a whole, just to kind of put into perspective this application that's before us today. The sport itself is struggling massively. The RFU, our union, has already announced this year they're at 160 million shortfall. The game is struggling across all clubs, across all areas, and community assets are at risk everywhere across the country. We've got a club here that has been on this site for 90 years, has been a cornerstone of the community. They're having to diversify and adapt and react to the environment they find themselves in. I was interested earlier, the point was raised about what's changed in 10 years. I think, to be honest, if we all look at the wider society, it'd be a lot easier to name what's still the same from 10 years ago. There's been a significant change in all our lives, and businesses, we hear in this chamber week in, week out about how businesses are applying for planning to adapt their businesses so that they can meet the current demands. For me, this is an application, an enabling application to facilitate a community asset to survive. I think when we look through the report, as Councillor Whitehouse has already highlighted, everything fits within our policy bar this one issue with the green belt. So it simply comes down to, do we believe this is very special circumstances, and do we believe, as the officer has put in his report, it's desirable, or do we believe it's essential for the survival of the club? I, with my experience and knowledge of rugby as a whole, can categorically say it will be essential for the club's survival. And I think it's imperative that members really, really look at this. And while I appreciate there's a tendency to say, yes, you've had one bite of the cake, and we are often sat here with developers and property developers that, let's say, play the game and come back for bite after bite after bite. We've heard from the speakers tonight, these are clearly not developers, these are volunteers. I think at worst we could accuse them of being naive about some of their costings with the first application, and they're now come back and they're trying to enable the survival of their club. For me, this is absolutely essential that members support this application, and I, for one, do not want it on my conscience that as member of this council, we have not enabled the club to secure its future and the possible ramifications of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. I always listen very carefully, especially to the local ward councillors, because they know the area best. And to be honest with you, I think that with special legal agreements and conditions, I think we actually can see that through. I think that there is a good chance of agreeing to special circumstances, and I think it is a community asset and it belongs to the community, so I will support this application to go through.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Whitehouse, coming back, please.
I just wanted to ask Mr Rogers, if I can, to respond to the query Councillor Morgan raised about the cost of floodlighting. I mean, I think I might be right in thinking that's the cost of the all-weather pitch and the floodlighting, but if Mr Rogers could just clarify that, it would be helpful.
My understanding is that that is for the floodlighting, and the ducting that goes with it because some of the floodlighting would need to be moved from where the housing would be to the all-weather pitch. So that's my understanding.
That's not true. We cannot take comments from the members, I'm afraid, but these, to me, seem pretty definite figures. I mean, they're not 600,000, whatever. 691,198 is a pretty definite figure, so I'd imagine there are quotations behind some of these figures quoted in here. Councillor Matthews.
Chairman, I think all members have received supporting documents through this process, and while we haven't got them in front of us now, it is categorically for the 4G pitch and the floodlights. Okay. That is, there's no doubt about that. Floodlights do not cost £600,000. That is for the entire 4G, because there is no mention anywhere else of the 4G pitch construction. That was without doubt for the 4G and the floodlighting.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chairman. I was on the site visit, have never been to the club before. I realise the seriousness of this. I think it clearly is inappropriate development to the green belt, but I do think there are some special circumstances here. But I am concerned why, because I think this is taking all of the ice cream out the cornet, because this is asking the council to put itself in a really difficult position, because I've sat on other planning meetings where we have golf clubs, other sports facilities, football people asking for exactly the same thing, and we've been put into a really difficult position because all sports facilities provide a really important community function, more so than ever. Lots of them are losing money, some are in private ownership, some are struggling, and an easy way out is to get some housing in the Greenbelt, and this causes us to be in a contortion of agony because we want to help, but we're stuck. I really would have thought this should have come forward either for fewer housing, and so there's more money raised by the club, or some affordable content, so there's a community benefit, not just if you are a member of the rugby club. So it's really, really pushing the max. So I want to help, I want to vote for it, but it is pushing it so far, and the club could have helped more to get this through, rather than pushing us to the absolute extreme, where we're in this bipolar position of wanting to help, but it's absolutely against the officer's recommendation. It's a very difficult one.
Councillor Kane, I think he wants to come back.
I'm sorry, it was just to let you know that similar amounts were actually spent by Bacchus Hill Football Club for floodlighting, so it is very costly. Not to that extent, but, you know, a lot of money, nevertheless.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to address Councillor Cuffman's points, if I may. Perhaps just to reiterate the situation of funding, he makes the point of the club could have potentially helped themselves and helped fund these essential improvements themselves. However, there is no funding there. There is no. We said about the officer highlighted that the last application was in 2015, and there hasn't been an application since. There hasn't been an application since by any rugby club because the RFU has no money. It's quite simple. They haven't got the money. To put it into context, the second tier of rugby in this country is the Championship. Every single club in the Championship last year had their funding slashed by 50%. So there's clubs going into administration. We had 2 Premiership clubs go into administration this year, as Wasps and Worcester both financially struggled to the point that they couldn't make it viable anymore at a professional level. And these are professional clubs run by professional financial managers and everything else that goes with that. And we've got a case before us of a club that is run by volunteers and have a simple plan to enable their survival. It just needs our support to allow that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Heap.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was going to bring up the point about Buckerstill Football Club getting better car park and floodlighting, which I was at the time a bit hazy about. But it's proved itself to be a huge success, and it represents something that can't be quantified in just money terms or harm to the Greenbelt. And I think it's a good thing for the community, so I would support this.
Thank you. Councillor Brady, coming back. Yeah.
If I could just come back very briefly, just to say, all the time at the moment, we've been considering the people who are using the rugby club. And we've had all the emails from all the people who are using the rugby club. And obviously, they are going to want better facilities. They are going to want better pitches, better car parking. And it's of no bother to them whatsoever if 9 new houses are built somewhere else away from where they live. But I've just asked the people here tonight just to also consider the people that live in that road, the people that live there. Just consider what all these lights and car parking and new buildings and everything, what they might think. Because obviously, if you're in the rugby club, you would obviously support it. But it is there forever for us all to look at. Thank you.
Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. Just playing a little bit of a devil's advocate here. So just referencing Councillor Matthews' point of there are all these professional rugby clubs that are becoming unsuccessful due to lack of funding, lack of probably appropriate running, whatever the reasons may be. So it gives me cause to think, even if we say approve this application and want the application to go ahead, build the 9 houses, how do we know that it still will be successful in the future? You'll be left with 9 houses there and no rugby club, potentially. I'm really saying I really want it to be successful. I do not want it to be unsuccessful. Like I said, just playing devil's advocate and thinking, how do we guarantee that it will be a success in future as well, if that's the state of the sport? We would obviously want to support the sport as much as possible. There was another point, but I've forgotten. But yeah, I think that was the main one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, I didn't intend to speak tonight, but I feel it's a debate that I have to make a contribution to, bearing in mind it's my ward as well as Holly's ward. This is a difficult one, and I will make a non-pecuniary interest first because I have great nephews who actually do play at the club. So I think it's got a long community history, as we heard throughout this evening, and has made a substantial contribution to the community. That's not a reason for granting a planning application, but it is a reason to listen carefully. And particularly I take on board what Councillor Matthews has said about the struggle that these type of clubs have in today's climate, and that will get tougher as the months and years go ahead. We're seeing external funding shrink at the present time. But when I came to this at Plans East, I took it on a very balanced view. There is the Greenbelt issue, and we can never take that too lightly. We've just gone through a long local plan debate, which is being considered by the inspector with a full Greenbelt review. So we have to take that very carefully into account when we're thinking about these type of planning applications. Are there special circumstances? Will the club survive without it? Yes, I'm sure the club will survive because it has great community support. Will it grow? Will it flourish? Will it move forward? Probably not, if it doesn't have the funding to create what it needs for a modern sporting environment. I, in the end, came down to the fact at Plans East that there wasn't strong enough conditioning, or we didn't have enough idea of what the conditions could look like. But I supported the application. I wanted those conditions strengthened and brought before us. I think that's really, really important. And the sort of issue is the original clubhouse is still standing. That needs to go as part of the car parking. And I think that needs to be done first. So there's a lot of issues there that need to be addressed. And I think there needs to be strong conditions added to this application. I agree with the residents of Upland Road and the concerns that I've had raised to me directly around parking and the overspill onto the street, particularly on a busy Sunday when the club is doing really well and there's people there and you get on-street parking. And I believe there should be a contribution from this development towards some form of Section 106 to the many schemes that have gone into the local highways panel to improve the situation in Upland Road. I love Councillor Kaufman's comment about the ice cream cone. Never heard that one before, but I can see where he's coming from. But I think in balance, if I was in your shoes this evening, I would be supporting the application only with the most stringent conditions put to it. So actually the club delivers on what it promises for the community and moves forward. And I would say to you this evening, if you have any doubts about supporting this application, or you feel that you'd like to give it further consideration, if you can't vote for it this evening because you haven't got the conditions in front of you, you haven't got the information that you require in the Section 106 agreement, I would say to you, think very carefully, and if necessary, the required number should send it up to full council to be considered, even in a fuller debate than this evening. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Someone had to remind me. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak in the debate? I think just summing it up, I started off saying heart and head and put both sides of that argument. And I was undecided at that time. And I think, like possibly every other councillor sitting in this chamber, in all of my election leafleting, I've said I will defend the green belt to the last degree. I think I've actually been swayed by the argument this evening that this may well be exceptional circumstances. So, members, the recommendation before you is by the officers to refuse this application. All those who wish to refuse the application, please show.
Three, Chairman.
All those who wish to refuse the refusal, please show. Abstentions?
8, Chairman.
Sorry, thank you. Abstentions?
Should be 2, Chairman. Yep.
Thank you, members. We now need a proposal to go forward. Councillor Whitehouse.
I mean, Chairman, clearly the usual next step would be to propose approval of the application with appropriate conditions. We don't, I know there have been some conditions floating around, but we don't have from officers, a full set of, worked up conditions, let alone, the outlines of what would go in a legal agreement, because you need a legal agreement both for the Epping Forest aspects as well as the, community sport and so forth aspects. I think what I'm going to suggest is that, the decision is deferred to allow officers to draft appropriate conditions, taking into account, what's been said tonight and those around, so that those conditions can then be voted on, with members having them in front of them, rather than, thought up on the fly.
Can we defer with the recommendation? Do we just defer?
Yeah, any point they could put forward a motion to defer.
Recommendation. Yeah, we didn't.
Well, I mean, if they want to defer for officers to work up a legal agreement and conditions, I see no reason against that.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure if it's a point of order or just a comment, if I'm allowed to make, because I agree with the deferral pending a decision to give officers time to work up very detailed conditions. I would also like an offer from the rugby club in terms of whether it's affordable housing contribution, whether it's one house, two houses, or part of this this has got to be a wider community benefit, in my opinion, than specifically focused on the club. So there should be part of the conditions where Councillor Whitbread has mentioned there are residents in that road. I think the back of the properties that were developed in the first phase are very poor. This has got to be a good quality development. We've got to be proud of what is the legacy if this does go forward. So detailed conditions of what's actually developed, including the design of those houses, which I think is poor, that's currently been left there. I'm I believe there should be an affordable content out of this proposal. It ticks a very big box for us, and it sets an appalling precedent. Even though it's only 9 houses, we shouldn't be giving the 9 houses if we do, because it's against the Council's Office's recommendation. If there are special circumstances, they must include an affordable component, in my opinion.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to defer on that basis? Councillor Pond?
I second the motion which John Whitehouse has made.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not entirely comfortable about introducing new issues at this stage. I mean, I'd rather the officers did it on the basis of the discussion that we held before the vote rather than after the vote.
Exactly. Okay. Members, we have a proposal put forward and seconded to defer this application to enable the officers to go through the stringent conditions we would require if this went ahead. Councillor Kane.
For clarification, really. So we defer it to come back to us here to actually discuss the conditions. Is that the correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
That's my understanding. Councillor Pond?
I'm not sure I could second that proposal because I think it does have to have an affordable component. Without it, I think it should fail. But if some of the houses were to be made affordable on site, that might be an extra public benefit.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Whitehouse already said, the discussion's been had and we've had a vote. We can't then have further discussions around the validity of the application if the decision's been made and we're deferring for conditions only. Then
we have not made a decision.
Sorry, if we're going to defer it until we've got the conditions in front of us, then I would second Councillor Whitehouse's motion if Mr. Pond is withdrawing.
I think my proposal is the proposal that's been put forward, and I would ask the club to look seriously between now and the deferment as to any movement possible on the affordable housing element and come back to us with that. That's the proposal. That's been seconded, I believe, now. Sorry, did you want to say? Councillor Whitbread.
Sorry, Chairman. I thought the committee had agreed that the refusal had been refused, and therefore that Councillor Whitehouse made a sensible proposal that it be deferred, the final part, but the refusal has been refused, and that's been voted on and agreed. So you can't go back on that. What is needed is clarity about what's going to be the conditions, but then you can't then vote again, because now the committee, as far as I can see, has said they can see the special circumstances in the Greenbelt, and what they're seeking is clarity on the conditions that need to be in place to make this work. Now, best will in the world, you know, we could end up going around in circles if we're not careful. We've got an application where the refusal has been refused, and we've heard some clear steers on what the conditions should be. I don't think you can now go retrospective looking at affordable housing elements on 9 units, because whether we like it or not, it was passed as 8 units originally, and this is a separate 9 units. I think we're getting ourselves into a debate that we're not here to have now.
Okay. Councillor Whitehouse.
Yes, I mean, on that point, I mean, clearly we've got to be considering the application in front of us, not the application we would like to have been submitted. So perhaps just for clarity, I should phrase the motion as the committee's minded to grant the application subject to the forming of appropriate conditions to be presented, and the meeting will be deferred for those conditions to be prepared.
I'm happy with that.
Point of order, Chairman.
Councillor Pond.
Could such, if those conditions are examined by the officers in detail and come back to us with a definite proposal, could not one of those conditions be that a certain number of the units hereby approved be affordable?
I think think sorry, Councillor Brady, you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to say we've refused the refusal, but we haven't yet voted for anything. So in my understanding, we haven't got to that stage yet. So if you do want to put alterations in, this is the stage to put it, but it's over to you.
No, I think...
But we haven't yet voted for.
I totally agree. I think we're tying ourselves in knots, as Councillor Whitbread said. My proposal is that we defer this. We have refused the refusal. We defer going to a vote to accept without the conditions. We need the conditions before we can go to the vote to grant permission. And my request was for the club, outside of the conditions, to maybe come forward with a proposal on the affordable housing. Nothing in the conditions about it, but if they could look at their books and maybe come up with something, it would... We've all made our case here tonight on where we stand on all of this. I think a little bit of movement, but we have refused the refusal. There is no doubt about that. So, Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a short point from me, just to note if members are minded to support Councillor Whitehouse's recommendation, just that there were a lot of conditions proposed at Plans East, so a lot of the work has already been done, and there was a lot of debate from local members, particularly around the highways and parking conditions. So if they could reference that, that would be fantastic.
And also the club have accepted, I think, all of those conditions in writing. Members, can we now, the proposal is that we defer the decision awaiting the detailed conditions from the officers. And I need a seconder on that proposal. Thank you. I have two. Members, could we please vote? All those that wish to defer on that basis, please show.
$11 chairman.
Those against?
1 chairman, so there'll be one abstention.
Abstentions. Yeah. Thank you, members. It's been a very difficult hour and a few minutes, but I think we are making progress, shall we say. Thank you. Thank you. Before we go on to the next item, can we get the chair back in the chair, please? German, so not by me.
excuse my language, but it was bloody cold out there as well. Introducing the members on the panel before I left. And also, I wish to declare that I will be a voting chair. I deliberately left that out. Anyway, okay, now we go on to, where are we now? Oh, page, oh sorry, 33 there. Oh, thanks. Right. Now, next item is on the agenda is EPF stroke 1954/22 building yard at Keysers Road, Nazing, Waltham Abbey. I believe you're presenting on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Like you say, this is EPF 1954/22, which is planning permission being asked for a residential dwelling on what is currently a builder's yard in Nazing. So this is the site outlined in red. As you can see, it's quite a strange shaped site that is located at the back of rows of houses on Great Meadow and Old Nazing Road. What you'll see here is a closer view of the plan in purple, and I apologise, the purple isn't too clear on the drawing, so I'll do it with my little red dot, is the existing buildings, which I'll show to you in a bit more detail in the next slide. And then the dark black outline here is the proposal for the new dwelling and garage. So this is the current buildings on the site. They are fairly dilapidated, and I've got some photographs that I'll show to you in a moment. We've also got some photographs that were not in the presentation to the subcommittee that we took from documents provided to us, so hopefully you'll get a good idea of what the site looks like. But there's some commercial units spread across the site, and they don't appear to be currently in use. This is what the buildings look like on site at the moment in plan form. And here we get to the actual proposal, and I apologise, I called it a garage, but it's actually a living room. The development is actually split into two parts, so the bedroom areas over here, and then the main living area in this part of the development here with open car parking. You will note that the development comes up pretty close, about a metre away from the property boundaries. This is the application. In plan form, the proposal is to clad the building in timber cladding, and the applicant has come up with quite an elegant solution in terms of trying to minimise the impact on the surrounding properties and the area by suggesting this green roof. And you will see an axonometric drawing that we included in the presentation that will hopefully give you a better idea of how the development sits on the site. The reason why I included this in the slide pack is just to show you in terms of the planning history, which is explained in the agenda. There was a previous planning application that was refused, and there was an appeal as well. So this was the previous proposal that was considered too large for the site, and also having a negative impact on neighbouring properties. This is the access or the driveway into the property. And what follows, and I'll keep them on as long as members want, but this just gives you a general idea of what the site used to look like. These photos are a few years old. These are photographs that were taken from the ecology report, so possibly a bit more up to date than the ones I've just shown you, but this is what the building looked, or the site looked like more recently. And this is the artist's impression or the axonometric drawing showing the current buildings on site. And this is the proposal. Like I said, you've got the bedroom area over here, and then this is the main living area in this part of the building over here. Now, while I keep that up, I'll just quickly run through the report for members. This report did go to the relevant subcommittee with recommendation for refusal for a few reasons. One was because we had not received a sequential flood test, which is a requirement for properties inside the flood zone, which this one is. We did have an appeal decision, like I said, on a previous proposal, and I do just want to read to members what the inspector there said regarding the flood risk. The issue is around the submission of a sequential test for this site, and I'm sure members would have seen that in the report. Now, at the time of the previous committee, we'd not had the flood risk assessment, a flood risk assessment had been carried out, but not the sequential test. A document was submitted to us in the last few days, which was said to be a sequential test, which we'd not had the time to be sent off for assessment. We did have a look at it, and in our opinion, it's not a sequential test. But the reason why I'm reading this appeal decision to members is just so that you have the full picture. So the inspector in that previous application did say that a flood risk assessment had been carried out, and it indicates that the likelihood of flooding is such that mitigation could be overcome if there is a proper flood risk assessment. He then also said the property is inside a flood risk area, and the sequential test needs to be done, and the site is unlikely to pass the test. However, he did say the site is it would imply that the site is unsuitable for residential development, but given that it is located within an area surrounded by residential development, a more pragmatic approach may be appropriate, subject to appropriate mitigation. So members did take that into consideration at the subcommittee, because we had a discussion around that. So in addition to the flood risk, the previous reasons for refusal were relating to the overdevelopment of the site and the impact of the neighbours, which members will see on page 39. The application was obviously then written up to come to this committee with a recommendation for approval, and members will see what we consider to be an appropriate package of conditions at the beginning of the report. Then just lastly, turning to page 44, there were some letters of support for this and one objection, which related to the impact on neighbours and the closeness of the proposal to one of the dwelling houses. And then members will also see, or I can tell members that in the last few days, a Section 106 agreement has been submitted to us. So in terms of that, the reason for refusal, which related to the SAC, is also not relevant anymore. So the recommendation to this committee from the subcommittee is for approval subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Thank you, members.
Sorry, Mr. Marshall, is it?
Mr. Maskell, but he was fine.
Maxwell, sorry. Maxwell, I should have put the glasses back on. Sorry. Anyway, you've got three minutes, isn't it? Yeah, 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm going to be reading a prepared statement to make sure I stay within the 3 minutes. I'm a local hard-working person within the borough. I purchased the site 7 months ago with the prospect of building my dream home. I was before some of you at Plans West in December. This current scheme was voted 12-0 in support to overturn the offer's recommendation for refusal. This was also supported by the local people and parish council. The reason why I believe it was before you all today was merely the fact that the sequential test wasn't carried out. There are 45 homes in total being built at the Chimes Nursery Garden Centre 100 metres away in the same flood zone on an old commercial site. I've been advised that the sequential test is not required when you are carrying out a change of use from commercial to residential. Nevertheless, I paid for the additional report to be carried out and submitted it to the case officer. The report complies and passed the sequential test. I have also supplied the case officer a signed Section 106 agreement and agreed to any permitted development rights to be removed from the site to keep the house as a bungalow and not for it to become a house in the future. With a positive outcome on this meeting, it will also give the neighbours complete peace of mind about the site being turned back into a commercial yard again at the back of their gardens, as unfortunately this is my only option if the planning is refused. I've also had some CGIs done, as you saw earlier, to help illustrate how nice the new dwelling will look compared to the current site. The new bungalow has a less of an impact on any of the neighbours, as instead of the existing building being right on the boundary, the new dwelling will be set in 1 metre from any boundary. This is a very good scheme for the site. It will be a good family home where I can bring up my young family. I understand Epping are trying to protect the bungalows within the borough, and this scheme is creating a brand new one. This site isn't just a wasteland at the back of people's gardens. It has a commercial use that will be removed. I'm looking to put a lovely new home for the family to enjoy for many years. I hope you can all agree with me that this is the best scheme for the site to put a new dwelling here, instead of creating havoc for all the local residents with any form of commercial use to the back of their gardens. Hopefully you can support the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. We had a good discussion in Plans West, and we actually agreed to approve this application with the subject, of course, to conditions and a legal agreement. Since then, it came to the DMC, but the recommendation is approved with conditions. So everything is in place, and I would recommend that we actually go with the recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other members? Councillor Heap. Sorry. Councillor Heap. Oh, Councillor Heap, sorry.
Thank you. I think it's a great design. I think you've done everything you can to make it work. I wish you success, and I'm going to vote for it.
Councillor Pond.
Chairman, I don't see, but this may be my failing sight, I have got my glasses on, about a landscaping condition. I note the site is a very awkward shape and it will impinge on neighbours differently. But I do think a landscaping statement should be submitted and approved.
Andrew, can you help with that one?
Yes, no problem. There is a condition mainly relating to the green roof, but if members want a specific condition for other landscaping, that's not a problem to put that on as well.
Because it is an awkward shaped site.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, yes, sorry. Yeah, of course you can.
Thank you. Councillor Kane, was that a proposal for us to go to a vote to accept? If it was, I'm happy to second it. I think we're taking the pragmatic approach that was mentioned in the appeal document. So if that was a proposal, I'm happy to second it.
Okay. Hey, members, are you happy to go straight to a vote now? No, you do want to speak, do you? Sorry. Sorry, it's getting confusing here.
Can I just check again? I haven't really studied this. Has there been a removal of development rights? Is that one of the, because to stop it becoming 2 stories? And if there isn't, could you add it? Well, if other people agree, please add it, but is it already there?
Sorry, yes, we've got condition 15 on there, and there has been recent correspondence with the applicant clearly stating that it'll have to remain a bungalow or a single story.
Anybody, sorry, are you prepared to let me go to a vote now, or you've got something else?
I was only going to say with the inclusion of the additional landscaping condition which was discussed.
Councillor Whitehouse. Yeah, Councillor Whitehouse.
I just wanted to clarify the visual impact on number 7, and I think it was 111, wasn't it, which were mentioned in the original reason for refusal. I mean, they seem to relate to the garden rather than the houses, but I just wonder if we could get some clarity on that relationship, or some more clarity.
Yes, Councillor. So this is 111 and 115, and like you say, so this area, sorry, let me just... yes, so this is 111 Old Nazing Road, and this is 115. Like you say, the area here is mostly garden, but then over here, the impact on this dwelling here is due to the closeness of the proposed building to the boundary there.
Councillor Pond.
Sorry, Chairman, I thought that was one of the reasons why I suggested the landscaping condition, and perhaps the officers could pay particular attention to those points when they come to consider it.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Pond. So, Councillor, condition 6 does call for hard and soft landscaping, and we'll make sure that the officers are made aware that it needs to be given special attention at that point of the development.
Anybody else? Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just quickly like to echo Councillor Heap's point. I'm fully supporting this application. I think it's a brilliant example of how to turn a pretty undesirable space into something that is attractive and useful. And I'd also like to echo Councillor Pond's point about the landscaping condition, because that is crucial to the impact of the surrounding dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else now before we go to a vote? No? Right. Let's do this the right way then. All those for the motion? Am I doing this the right way? Yeah.
It's the officer recommendation.
Oh, officer sorry.
Recommendation to approve with
Yes.
And section 106.
Okay. Sorry, I gather I didn't lead into it.
Sorry. Page 34, yes. So you're voting on the officer recommendation to approve the application subject to the conditions set out, and also the section 106 planning legal agreement. I think that's unanimous, Chairman.
Right, that's granted. Thank you.
Sorry? I know the speaker.
Right, got it. Yeah, okay. Right, item next item EPF stroke 1984/22 unit. No, hang on, that's the one we just done. Sorry. No, it isn't. No, that is the one. I beg your pardon, yeah. God, I'm getting a mess here. Anyway, are you going to be prepared to go for all of that? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, item 11, EPF 1984/22 is 3 shopping units in Arlingham Mews, in just off Sun Street in Waltham Abbey, and the proposal is for a change of use of 3 vacant retail units to 2 one-bedroom flats. The application did previously go to a planning subcommittee with a recommendation for refusal for 4 reasons. The members there discussed the proposal, and members voted to support the application. It had to come to DDMC because the one policy that council officers suggested refusal relates to the fact that these shopping units are protected in terms of the council's policies. So it's before members tonight with a recommendation for approval from the subcommittee, and the relevant conditions are found on pages 52 and 53. The previous reasons for refusal as suggested by officers are on page 54. So,
Sorry, I thought you finished.
no. This is the site in red identified here. We've got Derby Drive to the rear, and this is Sun Street, which everybody will know. And then Arlingham Mews, and I've got some photographs that I'll show you in a moment, is entered off Sun Street, and you can walk through the Mews to Derby Drive at the back. The property is inside the designated shopping area, and it is also inside the Waltham Abbey Conservation Area. So this is the entrance from Sun Street. These photographs were taken in June 2021. And towards the rear there, you can see the exit from onto Derby. So this is Derby Drive entrance. This is the existing units 14 and 15, which is to be converted into flat 2. And sorry, this isn't a great photograph, but this here is units 2 and 3, the shopping units that are to be converted into flat 1. So this is the existing ground floor plan with Sun Street at the back, and this is Derby Drive here. So the existing shop here, 2 shop units to be converted into 1 flat, and then the area here, these flats to be converted, and a small extension at the rear, which I'll show you in a moment, to accommodate the flat. So this is the proposal. You will see that these are 1-bedroom flats, 2 people. They do pass the minimum floor area standards. So they are proposed to be 57 square meters, and the national guideline is 50 square meters. You will see that on the front here, and I'll show you an elevation, some railings are proposed, which is one of the reasons why officers recommended refusal on this due to impact on the conservation area and the Mews itself. Now, the issue that officers had with the proposal is obviously, like I said, first of all, the loss of the shop units in a designated shopping area, and then secondly, also the impact of this on the viability of the shopping area, but also the impact of the interventions that we have here on the front on the conservation area. The flats themselves, like I say, pass the minimum floor standards, but officers felt that the residential accommodation that will result will be particularly poor in terms of outlook. There's only a few meters between these buildings over here, and obviously the public will be walking through here. You will see a bedroom over here with windows out on the Mews, and the same over here. These are the elevations. Like I said, a low railing proposed on the 1 flat there, and then a smaller low railing on the other flat, and there's also a gate or an intervention there to protect the bike storage area that is proposed behind it. So that's the end of the presentation. Members, like I say, this is before you with a recommendation for approval.
Oh yes, we got, how do I get him on? Bring him on. Oh, he is. Yeah. Right, this is, are we live now?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Pedalini, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. You've got 3 minutes. Can you put your case now, please?
Good evening, members. This evening you are presented with an application which is being recommended for approval following the proposal being presented at a previous committee meeting. At that committee meeting, there were no conditions proposed, and we now understand conditions have been drafted for this approval for this evening. We've studied the draft conditions and we comment as follows. Condition 4A, the condition refers to contamination. We need to understand for a small extension of 8 square metres for the proposal, where the remaining building is redundant and is being converted. Arlingham Mews was built 40 years ago, and it's a redundant retail shops and offices. being converted, we need to understand the rationale of the need for this condition, and if it is necessary in view of the very small extension which will involve excavations below ground level. Our client is happy with the remaining proposed conditions, and our client is happy to enter into a Section 106 agreement. And we request the committee members support the recommendation for approval this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, in Plans West, we had quite a debate and a discussion, and we argued the refusal by the officers. This unit, if you could go back, please, to the pictures of the area, and especially when you see the shops, there have been. The officer said that we're going to be losing valuable retail space. Well, I can assure you that I am the ward councillor, and for years and years we have seen different, shops opening and closing, and for some years now they have been made redundant because there is no footfall. It is not in the high street; it is inside the mews, and there is no frontage. We actually explicitly said there is no frontage to the high street, if you like, to some street. It is actually inside. No, can we see the other one, please? That it shows. That's the one. You can see, members, that the state of this. We have seen wool shops. We have seen little estate agents. We have seen a lot of hairdressers, barbers, every single one of them, they had to close, and they have been made empty, they remain empty. The area is actually redundant, and it collects a really not very nice people in the evening. So we demonstrated, we went through it, and we actually agreed almost unanimously that this area has to be developed. So I urge the members to actually go with the approval of this application. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Visiting the site, I was certainly alone when I went down there. Nobody else seemed to be coming down there. I thought it was a sort of a cross between Diagon Alley and a film set for Oliver Twist. It's a charming area, and it's a huge shame that it's sitting there empty. I understand where this is coming from. It's making use of the empty buildings. I certainly wouldn't wish to live down there. I've just said nobody walks down there, but if people do walk down there, they're looking straight into their rooms, whether there's railings or not. I think the balanced approach is to accept this. I don't think it's a very good scheme, but I think it's a better scheme than being empty and where it is now.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Sorry, Councillor Pond, and then Councillor.
I know this development quite well because I use it frequently to walk through from the museum and the library down to the Abbey grounds. It's a good situation. It was an idea for a retail emporium, set of little bijou shops, etc., which never worked. I can testify that over the last 40 years, which I remember pretty well, many shops have fallen vacant serial times. I tend not, on the whole, to go ahead with shop to residential conversions in town centres. This I think is on the periphery of the town rather than in the centre of the town. I think the harm it would cause to the viability of Waltham Abbey as a shopping centre would be 0.1% of that damage caused by Tesco and Lidl together. I really don't disagree with the Area Planning Committee's recommendations.
Councillor.
Sorry, I wasn't planning to speak, but having heard the discussion, I mean, it seems to me it's possible to accept the fact that, or not accept the residential viability, the retail viability argument, but if you agree that the place is suitable for redevelopment, it does not therefore necessarily follow that any redevelopment is therefore acceptable. And, you know, the design, the reasons put forward in terms of layout, you know, the comment Councillor William made about the proximity of the bedrooms to the outside, the outlook. I mean, they all seem to me valid reasons for refusal, even if you don't accept the retail viability argument. And it seems to me that if we are going to redevelop these sort of developments, we need to ensure they are good quality redevelopments and not the minimum, you know, possible. And, you know, I think I'll vote against it on that basis. That I think that, you know, those three reasons for refusal stand, even if the first refusal, you know, doesn't in local people's view.
Thank you, Councillor Kane.
Yes, on that point, Chairman, I would like to say that there are already developments, you know, into Derby Drive or in Sun Street above the shops as well, and the back of the shops as well. And there were extensions, and a lot of development has been done already. So it is not going to be the first one, if you understand me.
Councillor Brady.
Mine's a very minor point, but I used to know that place 40 years ago when it was first built, and the shop that was in it, and did actually do quite well. But it was a horsey shop, and I knew what I was looking for. I knew the name of the shop, but could I find it? Because Sun Street's really small. It's not very long, not very big, and I was going up and down, and it's so out of the way that nobody just walking along would ever really know what's up there. So, yeah, it was an idea to make it a sweet little shopping area, but I don't think it ever worked. And the ones that I used there, they soon moved out to a much larger premises. So, and we had to go in and upstairs and round and about, and it was very convoluted. It wasn't like any normal shop. So I think there was a mistake when they were originally designed as shops. So I don't think they do work.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to have to be careful because I think I'm in danger of agreeing with Councillor Whitehouse 3 times in a row this evening. It's very difficult one because, as we've heard from the local ward member and as myself as a Waltham Abbey resident, 100% this site is not suitable for commercial use. There is many shops that have tried and failed, and it just does not work. So I fully accept that point. However, as Councillor Whitehouse spoke on, it doesn't mean we just necessarily then need to accept any design. And I really don't like the scheme itself, how it's been designed. I fully support the notion of doing it, but I'm really struggling. Could we actually look at the floor plan to actually just see the design in front of us again, please? Thank you. And would it be possible, if you don't mind, with the laser to just sort of go through where the walkway is, so it's clear to members where people would actually be walking when they go between Derby Drive and Sun Street?
Thank you. Yeah, so this is Sun Street up here, and so this is the route through. So these two buildings are about 5 meters apart. So they are very close in terms of overlooking or looking into each other, but also for anybody walking here, you know, even if they walk right in the middle, they'll be 2.5 meters away from a bedroom window here and a bedroom here.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
If I could just come back on that then. I think that's fairly clear for members to see. And I understand, obviously, anyone who's looking to change these into residential are trying to maximise the amount of residential space there. But I just think a different design or a different scheme would be more suitable. I can't support I think the quality of accommodation is not up to standard. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Kane, and then Councillor, I forgot his name. Who's the guy at the back? I forgot his name. Sorry, Councillor Kane now.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the officer how much is the square meters of its flat, please?
They are both just over 57 square metres.
How much is by the national allowance?
50, I think I said in the presentation.
So, in other words, it is bigger than the actual national, and it is the size. We have to actually understand the size of those buildings. Just do not. They are not suitable for anything else but small dwellings. There is no way we can actually build something unless we demolish them and build them again. There is no way we can actually do something luxury there. I'm sorry, I do not agree.
Councillor Heap.
Well,
Councillor Heap was first, actually.
Just to join Councillor Matthews in discomfort, I find myself in agreement with the planning officers on this one. As Councillor Whitehouse has pointed out, it's not any scheme at any price, and I can't see that this one is a great scheme, so I don't think I can support it, despite Councillor Kane's obvious interest and care for Waltham Abbey.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, I mean, a lot of people would be very pleased to live in little places like this. I mean, they're not high quality probably, but they're accommodation, which is what we want in some places. And I agree with the officer to grant the application.
Right. Anybody? Sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kane.
Thank you. Just a very quick observation from me with regard to the overlooking question. In truth, as far as pedestrians are concerned, it's no different to any other property that would be fronting straight onto a street. If you think of a Victorian terrace with a pavement outside, you are right on top of their windows. All of the houses down Hybrid Street, the pavement runs right past people's front doors, right past their front windows. No difference at all.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Councillor Pond.
Just wanted to add, Chairman, that walking along the pavement in Woolard Street in Waltham Abbey is not very different from walking along through the alleyway which would be created by this application. I really think we have got to rescue this little area from dereliction and convert it into a reasonable use.
Okay, is there anybody else? Right, shall we go now to a vote on the officer's recommendation? Okay, all those for?
$11, Chairman.
Against?
3, Chairman.
Any abstentions?
Should be no abstentions, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Then that motion is passed. Thank you.
Any other business?
Sorry, oh yeah, now we've got the other bit somewhere. Oh, yeah, borrow that.
Item 12.
I've forgotten.
Any other business?
Oh, sorry.
Item 12.
Yeah. Right, item 12.
No, Chairman, no other business and no reason to exclude the public and press either.
Done a lot. Thank you very much.
Just whack the gavel.
Okay.